3:47 in the morning. Your hands smell like flour and your back won't stop burning. This is Tuesday. Not a special Tuesday. Not a holiday rush. Not a catering emergency. Just Tuesday. This is when the world is asleep. This is when the ovens come on. This is when the real bakers show up. Most people think baking is warm kitchens and Pinterest recipes. They think it's Sunday mornings and banana bread and the smell of cinnamon. They're not wrong. That world exists. But there's another world underneath it. A world with a hierarchy, with a language, with a level of obsession that most people will never understand and could never survive. There are 8 levels to this world. You're about to live all of them. Level 1, the home baker. The recipe says 350 degrees. You set it to 350 degrees. The recipe says 2 cups of flour. You measure 2 cups of flour. The bread comes out wrong anyway. You call it rustic. You post a photo. 12 people like it. One of them is your mother. This is where everyone starts. The warm side of baking. The forgiving side. The side where failure still smells good. You're working without a scale. Most home bakers do. That 2-cup measurement you're so confident about? Depending on how you scoop, it introduces up to a 30% error in your flour weight. 1 pack of flour can measure as 3 entirely different amounts across 3 different hands. The bread doesn't know your intentions. It only knows the math. During 2020, flour sales in the United States spiked dramatically. Millions of people suddenly discovered bread. Social media filled with imperfect loaves and proud captions. Felt like a movement. For most of them, it lasted for months. You're not like most of them. Something about this won't let you go. You think this is baking. You haven't even touched the door yet. Level 2, the passionate amateur. You name your sourdough starter. That's how you know something has changed. You cancel plans on a Friday night because the starter needs feeding. You tell yourself it's just a hobby. You tell your friends the same thing. They stop asking you to come out on Fridays. You've bought a digital kitchen scale, then a bench scraper, then a Dutch oven. Then the razor-sharp scoring blade that professional bakers use to cut the dough before it goes in. You didn't even know that tool had a name 3 months ago. Now you have 2 of them. You're learning something real now. That sourdough starter isn't just yeast from a packet. It's a living culture, wild lactobacillus bacteria and Saccharomyces cerevisiae, working in a specific, delicate balance. The bacteria produce lactic and acetic acid, which creates the flavor. The yeast produces carbon dioxide, which creates the rise. Too warm, the yeast goes too fast. Too cold, it goes dormant. The fermentation window is measured in hours, not guesses. You start tracking hydration ratios. You learn that professional bakers talk about dough in percentages, baker's percentage, where flour is always 100% and every other ingredient is measured relative to it. A 75% hydration loaf means 75 grams of water for every 100 grams of flour. You ruin 4 loaves figuring out what that actually feels like in your hands. The 5th loaf is different. The crust shatters. The crumb is open and irregular and honest. You cut a slice and stand over the counter eating it plain and something in your chest shifts. You want to feel this again. You want to understand why it worked. That question is the door. The problem isn't that you're good. The problem is you want to go further. Level 3, the bakery apprentice. The alarm goes off at 2:45 in the morning. You hit snooze once. You remember what the head baker told you on your first day. He said, the bread doesn't wait. You get up. Your first week, you wash trays. You sweep flour off a floor that will be covered in flour again in 20 minutes. You learn where everything lives, the speed rack, the proof box, the walk-in, the deck oven that runs so hot it singes the hair on your forearms if you lean in wrong. Nobody explains much. You watch. That's the curriculum. In France, this kind of training has a name and a structure. The CAP Boulanger, the professional baking certificate, takes 2 years of supervised apprenticeship. Boulangerie has been a regulated craft in France for centuries. The title of boulanger carries legal weight. You can't just call yourself one. You earn it or you don't. In America, there's no equivalent protection. But the kitchen has its own hierarchy, its own initiation. And it is not kind to people who think they already know things. By week 2 you're scaling dough. 350 grams per loaf, 20 loaves per batch, 5 batches before the shop opens. Your hands move before your brain catches up. You make a mistake on the 3rd batch, wrong water temperature throws the fermentation off. The baker notices without being told. He doesn't yell. He just looks at you for a long moment. That look costs you more than a reprimand would. You start to understand the gap between baking because you love it and baking because it has to be right every single morning with no exceptions. Your hands crack in winter from constant washing. You stop complaining by week 3. Everyone's hands are cracked. Nobody talks about it. This is the job. Your hands crack in winter. You stop complaining by week 3. Level 4, the artisan baker. You know this dough by feel now. You press 2 fingers into the surface during bulk fermentation and the way it springs back tells you exactly where you are. Not approximately. Exactly. The thermometer confirms what your hands already knew. You're working with long cold fermentation now. You retard your shaped loaves in a walk-in overnight, sometimes 18 hours, sometimes 48 because the slow cold process does something to the flavor that speed never can. Organic acids develop. The gluten structure tightens and relaxes in a particular way. When you pull those loaves in the morning and score them, they hold their shape with a precision that straight dough baking can't replicate. Scoring is its own art. The lame hits the dough at a 20 to 45 degree angle. The exact angle determines how the ear forms. The ear is the wing of crust that peels back and rises during the bake. Other bakers look at your ear before they look at anything else. It's a signature. It tells them everything about your technique without you saying a word. You're working on a deck oven now. Stone or ceramic decks that absorb and radiate heat with an evenness that home ovens can't approach. The temperature runs between 500 and 550 degrees Fahrenheit. Steam is injected in the first few minutes of the bake. This is critical. The steam keeps the crust flexible long enough for the bread to fully expand before it sets. Without it, the crust forms too early and the loaf can't open. The bread blows out the side instead of the score. Every variable is a choice. Every choice is visible in the final product. You're proud now. The customers don't know what they're looking at, but they keep coming back to you specifically. They ask for your bread. They say your name. You've built something that has your fingerprint on it. Took years to get here and you know it. You're good. But good is the most dangerous place to stop. Level 5, the pastry chef. You've crossed into a different world now. Bread is structure and fermentation and patience. Pastry is physics and chemistry and precision that has zero tolerance for approximation. You're laminating dough. Croissant dough. You fold cold butter into cold dough, fold, rest, fold, rest, 27 discrete layers of alternating butter and dough by the time you're done. In the oven, the water in the butter converts to steam and forces the layers apart. If your butter was too soft at any point, it absorbed into the dough instead of staying laminated. 3 days of work, gone. You don't get to call it rustic. You're tempering chocolate. This means understanding polymorphism, the fact that cocoa butter can crystallize into 6 different molecular structures, and only one of them, beta V, gives you chocolate with the right gloss, the right snap, and the right melting point. To get there, you melt the chocolate completely, drop it to 82 degrees Fahrenheit to seed the right crystals, then bring it back up to 88 or 89 degrees to work it. 1 degree off in either direction and you get bloom, gray streaks, crumbly texture, no snap. The batch is over. You learn to check the temperature with your wrist before the thermometer confirms it. The difference between the right chocolate and the wrong chocolate is measurable in seconds. Something strange is happening to you. You've stopped eating sugar recreationally. When someone puts a dessert in front of you, you don't taste it, you analyze it. You identify the fat content in the ganache by how it coats your tongue. You know immediately whether the pastry cream was cooked to the right temperature. You can taste the difference between vanilla extract and a real scraped pod. Other people eat dessert. You see problems and solutions. The joy hasn't disappeared, but it has moved from your mouth to your hands, from tasting to making, from pleasure to precision. You're not sure when that happened. You're not sure if you'd undo it. You used to love dessert. Now you see every pastry as a problem to solve. Level 6. The head baker/executive pastry chef. You don't bake as much anymore. This is the thing nobody warned you about. You manage people now. You write schedules. You sit in meetings about food cost percentages. You're targeting 25 to 30% for the pastry program, because above 30 and the margins collapse, and below 20 and you're cutting quality in ways that will show up on the plate. You know this because you've watched other programs fail in both directions. This morning someone called out sick. The junior pastry cook left a batch of creme brulee unrefrigerated overnight. You discovered it at 6 a.m. and had to rebuild the entire dessert menu by 11 for lunch service. You did it. Nobody knew. That's the job now. Invisible problem solving. Constant triage. Burnout in professional kitchens is not a rumor. Industry surveys and culinary labor research consistently find that more than half of culinary professionals report severe occupational stress. The hours are long and the labor is physical and the margins of error are unforgiving, and the pay, at all but the highest levels, does not reflect what the work actually costs a human body over time. You've had to let someone go. A junior baker. Talented, earnest, slower than the kitchen needed. You sat across from him at a table in the back office and said the words. He didn't argue. He just nodded and thanked you and left. 2 months later you found out he'd opened a small pop-up at a farmer's market. His bread was extraordinary. You still think about him. You think about the decision. You think about whether it was the right one for the kitchen or just the easy one for the spreadsheet. You've never resolved it cleanly. The craft is still there. You still walk the line at 5 a.m. before the cooks arrive and touch the dough and check the proofing and taste the mice. These 20 minutes alone in the kitchen are the only part of the day that feels like the thing you originally loved. Everything else is management. And management doesn't taste like anything. You built a team that bakes better than you used to. You haven't touched dough in 3 weeks. Level 7, the competition baker. You are making the same sugar showpiece for the 167th time. You know this because you've been counting. The Coupe du Monde de la Boulangerie, the World Cup of Bread, is held in Paris. National teams of 3 compete in bread, viennoiserie, and artistic categories. The Coupe du Monde de la Pâtisserie, the World Pastry Cup, runs alongside it at the biannual Syrah trade show. 10-hour marathon sessions, international judges, 3-person teams working simultaneously on chocolate pieces, sugar sculptures, and plated desserts. Teams prepare for 12 to 18 months. Every hour you're not in this practice kitchen is an hour a competitor is in theirs. Your team has divided the work. You own the sugar sculpture. 6 kilograms of isomalt and sugar, blown and pulled and cast into a structure that must be architecturally stable, visually coherent, and completed within the time limit. You've broken it at the final stage 13 times. Each time you start again. You don't discuss the losses. You don't do a post-mortem. You just mix another batch and heat the sugar to the right temperature and start pulling. Your partner asked when this ends. You couldn't answer. Not because you didn't know, but because the honest answer, after we win or after we don't, felt too bare to say out loud. You've missed birthdays. You've missed dinners. You've missed enough that people have stopped inviting you and you've stopped pretending to feel guilty about it. The guilt is there. It lives underneath the focus, in the quiet moments between pulls. You've learned to cover it with motion. On competition day you work clean. Your hands don't shake. You've been here so many times in practice that the real thing feels like memory rather than performance. You move through the piece, and when the whistle blows and the judges approach the table you step back and look at what you've made. It's the best version of it you've ever produced. The podium doesn't know what you gave to reach it. The podium doesn't care. The podium doesn't know what you sacrificed to reach it. The podium doesn't care. Level 8, the legend. Someone is writing about your croissant in a language you don't speak. This no longer surprises you. The Miller Ouvrier de France, the MOF, is a state-level competition held every 4 years. Best craftsmen of France. Recipients are judged by blind panels of their peers. The work is submitted without names. The criteria are severe. Fewer than a few hundred active MOF holders exist in the world across all the pastry and baking disciplines. When you earn it, you wear a collar with the 3 colors of the French flag on your chef's whites for the rest of your professional life. No one gives it to you. No one can take it back. You've been profiled in food publications across 6 countries. You have a waiting list. The prices at your counter are not justified by the ingredients, they're justified by what the ingredients have been through, by the temperature held at 4 a.m., by the decision not to cut a single corner across 30 years of mornings. A journalist asks you, in a recorded interview that will be watched by 100,000 people, what did you sacrifice to reach this level? You give the polished answer. You talk about discipline and patience and love for the craft. You say the right things in the right order. The journalist nods. The camera light stays green. Later that night, you're alone in the prep kitchen. It's after midnight. You're checking the levain for tomorrow's first bake, something you could delegate and don't. You think about what the real answer was. The friendships that dried up like dough left uncovered. The mornings you drove to work in the dark while your family slept. The version of yourself that might have existed if you'd quit at level 3, easier, softer, less known to anyone except the people who loved you. You don't know if that version was better. You can't access it to compare. What you know is this: the flour in your hands tonight is the same flour that was in your mother's kitchen when you were 7 years old. The weight of it, the smell of it, the way it coats the crease of your thumb. Everything else about this life is unrecognizable from that child. The oven is already on. You begin. It's 3:47 in the morning. Not in your kitchen. Not this time. In a different city. In a small bakery that hasn't opened yet, that exists right now only as a rented space with secondhand equipment and a used deck oven that runs a little hot on the left side. There is a person here. Young. Hands that have never cracked from winter washing. A phone propped on the counter with a recipe pulled up, grams and percentages and timing cues, annotated with screenshots from forums and notes from a class they took on weekends for 3 months. The dough is in the bowl. The water temperature was exact. The starter, which they have been feeding for 6 weeks and have not yet named. They won't name it, they tell themselves, because that would be too much. Passed the float test 20 minutes ago. They don't know what's coming. They don't know about the cracked hands. They don't know about the 2 a.m. alarms that stop feeling like alarms and start feeling like the beginning of the only part of the day that's theirs. They don't know about the people they'll hire and the people they'll have to let go. They don't know about the competition they'll prepare for. They don't know about the version of themselves they'll sacrifice to become the version of themselves they can't yet imagine. They only know that the dough smells right. They only know that the oven is on. They press their fingers into the surface and they wait.